You make a mistake, you get walked into a room by your best friend, you don't walk out again.
When you have revenge in your heart, you might as well dig 2 graves, one for you, one for them.
Takes you on a tailspin of terrible life. We all have past, but you can do something to present and future.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Millennial's Choice Show. I am your host, Matthew Ablakan, and you know, guys, we've been saying this a long time. I'm with my co-host brother from the same mother, Danny Ablakan, and we verified he is from the same mother now, and you can tell the resemblance is there. So that joke is done. We're putting that joke to bed. But we got a special episode. We got a special guest. Both of us are super pumped.
I'm pumped.
Yeah, and you know, there's so much ways we can relate to Big Joe. We love fighting. We love MMA, not street fighting, but we love, you know, watching this as a sport. We've trained, Danny and I myself, in the past when we were, 40 pounds lighter. But nonetheless, we've got someone who's got a very interesting story. Mike Tyson called him the toughest white guy on the planet. You know, for the toughest man on the planet, the baddest man on the planet, to call you the toughest white man on the planet, that's a major, major compliment. So I want to welcome to the show, Big Joe Egan. Welcome to the show, Big Joe.
Matthew, thank you for the introduction. Danny, thank you as well. Great to be on the show. I want to clarify something before we start. I sparred with Mike Tyson for a few years. And this particular day we were sparring, there was 4 white sparring partners, which was unusual because normally there'd be some black guys. But this particular day there was 4 white sparring partners. He knocked 3 of them out. I was number 4. I got battered from pillar to post. But he never put me down. And at the end of the spar, Mike Tyson said, Joe Egan is the toughest white man on the planet. Far, far, far from it. I was the toughest white man in the gym that day. But what a compliment. What a compliment from a man like Mike Tyson. But like I say to people, if you're going to get battered, you might as well get battered by the best. I got battered by the best of my era. I got battered by Mike Tyson. I got battered by Lennox Lewis. But it was an honour to share the ring with both of them men because both of them achieved what every fighter dreams of achieving. Every fighter that steps into the ring to fight wants to win a world title. I wasn't good enough to win a world title. I wasn't anywhere near good enough to win a world title. I fought lots of world champions. And like I said earlier, it was an honour to share the ring with these greats of the ring, particularly Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis, and even prouder to say that they are my friends. That's the great thing about boxing and combat sports in particular. You know, you earn each other's respect. You play football, you play basketball, you play golf, you play tennis. You don't play fighting. And anybody that climbs into the boxing ring or a cage or anywhere they're going to do full contact combat, you have to admire them, and the respect that boxing gives you for yourself and then for your opponent is the most important thing in the world, because if you don't have self-respect and respect for others, it's not nice. And I believe that boxing has instilled that in not just me, in a lot of the fighters, if not them all. You know, I love the sport. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm just a fan of the sport. And I believe that the boxers are the greatest athletes on the planet, but I'm biased being an ex-boxer.
That's right. And how old were you when you received this compliment from Mike Tyson?
18.
Wow, that's young.
I started sparring with Mike when we were both 17, and I'm actually 6 months older than Mike. He's I'm November 65. He's June 66. So I'm actually 7 months older than Mike. But
Nice.
We were both 18 at the time when he gave me that compliment, and it's I'm going to carry it through life, because people say I talk a lot about getting battered by Mike Tyson, but I've earned the right to talk about it, and I will talk about it to my last breath, because I was, like I said, I was proud to share the ring with him, and I'm even proud to say he's my friend.
Yeah. And November what, by the way? Just curious. November what?
15th, November the 15th.
That's his birthday.
November 15th.
Yeah.
Oh, well. We're both Scorpio, a good birthday.
That's right. That's right. He didn't quite make the cut. He's November 25th. He just missed it by a couple of days, but that's okay.
Well, I'm going to tell you a quick story, right? If you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
Please.
Mike used to speak to my mother. She's no longer with us, God rest her. She passed away December 28th, just gone last year. I lost,
Our condolences.
Our condolences, yeah.
I lost my mum and dad. I lost them both last year. It was a hard year. But I love talking about my mum and dad, you know, and I'll talk about them through this interview. But when Mike used to speak to my mother on the phone regular, she used to say, "Oh, Mike," she'd be on the phone to him, "Oh, Mike, thank you so much for looking after my son." He was battering me week in, week out, but she didn't know that. She didn't know that. Outside of the ring, when I wasn't getting beaten by Mike, he cared for me. I was minded in the Catskills by Cuss and Camille and Tom and Manny, and it was like a home from home for me. And Mike looked after me outside of the ring. You know, we used to go to the cinema together. We used to do a lot of things, and it was only a few minutes, you know, of getting beaten. The rest of the day were the hours of affection. Anyway, this particular day, Mike said to me, he said, "How's your mother doing, Joe?" She'd had a lump removed from her neck, and we were concerned that it was cancer, because my Uncle Brian had died at 47 with cancer, never smoked in his life. My mother was a smoker, and we were concerned. And I said to Mike, I said, "My mum's had a lump removed from her neck, and we're just worried." He said, "Let's go and visit your mother." Now, they'd been speaking on the phone for 22 years at that stage, on and off. For 22 years, and they'd never met. So suddenly we've landed in Dublin. The hysteria, Dublin airport was packed with people inside and outside of the airport. I'd actually worked in Dublin airport with security with Delta Airlines years previous. So now to walk through Dublin airport, well, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, the youngest heavyweight of all time, heavyweight champion of all time, was a very proud moment. And then we went to visit my mother in my auntie's house that was on a housing estate that my family had been evicted from. I'll tell you that story later on if you want, but I'm now going on to a housing estate that my family had been evicted from with one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time to visit my fragile mother. When Mike met her, he embraced her in his arms. This is a man that can break bones with punches. I know it was on the end of his punches. So I know the power in the man. He embraced a fragile woman, and it was beautiful to see. Scott Welch was with us, the former British and Commonwealth heavyweight champion who'd fought under Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield undercard. Scott had fought Henry Akinwande for the title. He went 12 rounds for the title. So we're now in the company of my mother in my auntie's front room, and the subject of birthdays came up. And my mum said, "My birthday is the 12th of July. And Mike's is the 30th of June, and they're both of the same birth sign, which was the Cancer sign." And Mike said to my mother, Mrs. Egan, he said, "I remember on my 18th birthday, because I'd been with Mike when we were 17. He said, "I remember on my 18th birthday, you sent me over a birthday present, Mrs. Egan." He said, "You sent over a shoebox with some potato chips in the shoebox. There would have been Irish potato crisps." He said, "Some money in an envelope. It would have been very little money. And some sweatshirts. It would have been second-hand sweatshirts." And my mum looked at Mike and she said, "Mike, you remember that? This was 22 years previous."
Wow.
He said, yes, Mrs. Egan." He said, "Very few people have given me anything in my life." Yes, I remember it. I remember it well. Scott Welch got choked up. He had to leave the room. I broke down crying. It was so emotional. And Mike looked at me while he embraced my mother. Excuse the language, because I don't like to curse. He looked at me and he goes, "Joe, motherfucker, you're always crying." He made me cry so many times when he battered me. But this was tears of joy and sadness at the same time, because when you think a man that could have been a billionaire athlete, remembering a couple of packets of crisps, a couple of pounds in an envelope, few dollars, and some second-hand sweatshirts 22 years previous. You know, it shows you what it meant to that man. Yeah. And he is, at the end of the day, he is only a human being. And he's had such an emotional roller coaster of a life. Even with what he's achieved as the heavyweight champion, I still don't envy what he's had to endure in life. Boxers have very, very humble beginnings. People like to say that boxers come from the gutter. I don't like that terminology. We come from humble beginnings and we fight to make a better life for ourselves, for our families, and you do it by boxing. You do it by fighting, whether it be in the cage, whether it be in a boxing ring, to get the rewards and sometimes the riches. But you do it as a job. You fight your opponent. It's nothing personal. Promoters sell it as a personal journey because they've got to try and make it, to the fans as if it's personal. But it's nothing personal. You see the way fighters embrace at the end of a fight. People that don't understand the sport, they say, how can they batter each other for 12 rounds and then embrace? Like I said earlier, it's a respect thing.
Yeah.
And they fight to make a better life for themselves and for their families. And that's what boxing has done for a lot of men and now women. It's took them from very humble beginnings to the trappings of success and the wealth. And Mike, he became very, very rich, but unfortunately, with the parasites and the scoundrels of the entourages that he had, jumped on board with him, and they took a lot of money that he'd earned that they didn't earn, and they didn't have the rights to take. I won't mention any names. We know who they are.
We know who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know who they are. And
we know who they are. And people watching this show know who they are.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. And they are... Boxing is one of the only sports in the world where the lambs rule the lions. And it's quite tragic, really. You see these heavyweight champions of the world, the modern day Hercules, the modern day Samsons, being abused and robbed by wimps. And like I said, where the lambs rule the lions. And it's sad. The governing bodies, the WBC, the WBA, the IBF, the WBO, they should try harder to protect the fighters' income, because it is the hardest earned money in the world. Like I said earlier, you play other sports, you don't play fighting. And you spill blood, sometimes your own, sometimes your opponent's. And when you have to spill blood for a livelihood, that money is the hardest earned in the world.
Yeah, and it's I was listening to Mike Tyson's podcast, and he said something in the past where he said, I'm happier now. And they asked him why. He said, well, I don't have anything that anybody can take from me anymore. But that's how he looked at all this stuff. Isn't that crazy?
Sad, Matthew?
Yeah, I know.
Isn't it sad, really, Matthew? Isn't it sad that the most powerful heavyweight of my era and your era on the planet haven't been robbed, and the organizations not protecting them, and the powers to be not protecting them? Because really, we live in a so-called civilized society, and when these organizations can stand idly by and let the combatants of their organizations be robbed and do nothing, it's tragic.
Yeah, it's tragic and surprising too, because I would think that the those organizations and they would actually look out for the fighters, because it would be in their best interest to do that as well, to preserve them, right? It's just crazy how everything is set up, and the fighters are not protected as much as they can be.
They should be protected more. Fighters should be protected more. And when you see these organizations not protecting them the way they should, it's very, very sad. It's very, very sad. And when you see heavyweight champions of the world having to go down and collect unemployment benefit, having to stand on doors of nightclubs, having to get state handouts, it shouldn't happen. Right. It should not happen. But it's because of boxers need to be wrapped in cotton wool and protected, because they are very vulnerable. Because most fighters, I can speak for myself and I can speak for a lot of the fighters that I know, are very trusting, and they trust people, because fighters think, which they have the right to think, they're tough guys, and good women now fighting. And they like to think that we're not going to be abused, we're not going to be robbed, we're tough guys. But it happens so often. And they trust people. And fighters concentrate on the fight they're blinkered, and they have one dimension they think of the fight, and they trust people to take care of everything outside of them blinkers. And sometimes the people that they trust are parasites. And the organizations of intellectual people, educated people, people of authority, you know, some people that are on the organizations are barristers, legal people, solicitors, legal people, police officers, legal people. So they should have better morals and better principles, and they should mind the fighters better. And that's only my opinion, and we're entitled to our opinion, you know. And I think yous are both of the same opinion. Fighters need to be minded and cared for a lot better, because there's no pension in fighting. There's no pension in boxing. Your last fight really is your last payday, and if you haven't invested your money wisely, and if you've had your money robbed off you by the people around you, it's very, very tragic.
Yeah, there's this fine line, this balancing act. And, you know, the UFC takes a lot of heat for this nowadays, Dana White, with respects to fighter pay and things like that. But there's this fine line between the promotion, which is, you know, very important for the sport of boxing so that, you know, everyone can make some money and there's a sport involved. But then also the fighters that make up the sport, because without the fighters, there are no promotions. There's no sport. So there's that fine line.
I've never met Dana White, but I know his background is boxing. I believe he's a massive boxing fan. That organization that he started, the UFC, is incredible. It's incredible, you know. But when I stood on the doors years ago, I left school when I was 14 years of age, and I went under the doors of nightclubs at 15. I believed I was going to make my fortune boxing, and I didn't need education. I left school with 2 swimming certificates, an 800-meter swimming certificate and a 1,500-meter swimming certificate, because I really believed boxing was going to be my livelihood. I was going to become a rich man out of the sport. Anyway, it didn't happen in that way, but I think that education is very important, and I encourage education now. You know, I regret that I wasn't educated properly, but what was I starting that for?
You were talking about the story when you were 14. We were mentioning Dana White, the UFC.
Sometimes, Matthew, sometimes I regret having that last fight. One punch too many, I forget things, you know. What did I
All good.
That? Oh,
let me help you bring it back. So you're 14. You drop out of school. Now, at this time, this was in Dublin. This was in Ireland.
Yeah, in Ireland. Yeah, I went under the doors. I was on Jules nightclub at 15, and the head doorman, Declan Foley, Johnny McIntyre, Johnny Nugent were the doorman, and the club was owned by Pat Gibbons, who owned the Sands Hotel and Casino in Portmarnock. And I remember one night I was on the door. I was 16 at this stage, and I'd left school a year or two at that stage. I was out of school at 14, and I was setting up the barriers, and I saw 2 of my old school teachers coming to the door. Mr. Cook, who was the English teacher, and Jim Doherty, who was the physics teacher. You could call him Jim, he was cool, right? And they used to wear ripped denims and clogs and ponchos. And Declan Foley was stopping them because it wasn't a good dress code for the club. Anyway, as I'm carrying out the barriers, I saw them, I caught a glimpse of them, and I hid because they thought it was 21 on the door.
Right.
Mr. Doherty, Jim Doherty and Mr. Cook knew that I was a lot younger than that. So when I hid, Declan was stopping them coming in, and he was saying, look, guys, there's a dress code, and unfortunately ripped denims and clogs and the ponchos aren't the dress code. And Mr. Cook, very, very well-spoken English teacher, he said, don't judge us by our attire. He said, we're school teachers. Next of all, as I sort of peeked out, Mr. Cook saw me, and he went, Jim, there's no point. And he was just about to say it's a teenage disco. As I stepped out, I pushed Declan Foley out of the way. I said, it's okay, Declan. I said, these were my school teachers when I left school, and I was winking years ago. I said, how are you doing, Jim? And I shook his hand, and I've ushered them in. Anyway, Mr. Cook said, what are you doing here, Joe? I said, I'm working the door. They think I'm 21. I started the door when I was 15. But I encourage education, and I regret that I didn't really get more qualifications or education. But I believed that boxing was going to make me my fortune, and sadly it didn't. But I enjoyed my life as a boxer. and I still enjoy being around the sport. I love the sport. I admire the boxers, and I just think it's the greatest sport in the world.
Yeah, and just to interject on that, when they asked Bob Marley, they said, "Are you rich?" And he said, "What do you mean by rich?" And they said, "You have a lot of money." And he said, "That's how you define rich." And so he said, "I don't have a lot of possessions, but I'm rich." And so you're reaching out to millions of people. We get to hear your story. You've got some awesome stories, amazing life experience you could pass on to the next generation. I think you're rich. I think you're very rich. And you got to share the ring with Tyson and Lewis. Like that's great. That's unreal. Incredible.
And I won 7 Irish boxing titles.
Yes.
I was dreaming about winning one. You know, I was dreaming about winning one, and I over-excelled, I think, and I won 7. I won 2 under-19 Irish titles. I won 1 junior title, and I won 4 senior titles. And I boxed for Ireland on many occasions. I won a bronze medal in 1987 in the Acropolis Games, which is a world ranking tournament, which was a major achievement. I wasn't any way of a good boxer. I was just tough. But I think all fighters that climb into the ring have to be tough, and you have to have courage, because courage is something you're born with. You know, skills you can improve. Courage, you either have it or you don't have it. And I think all fighters are born with courage. And that's one thing I've always had all my life, is an abundance of courage. But when I was a child, Ireland's greatest export has always been its people. For a small nation, we are all over the world. And we didn't have an armada like the Spanish, or an armada like the French or the Portuguese or the British Navy. We had small currachs. We had little rowing boats. And for a country of only a few million, 4 million, 5 million people, to make the impact around the world that the Irish have made, you go anywhere in the world, you meet somebody Irish or second generation Irish, third generation Irish descendants. It's incredible to think the impact that we made around the world.
A lot of Irish people in Canada as well. We've met a lot of Irish people here.
There's a big impact of Irish around the world. So I get emotional sometimes. Well, I am an emotional person at the best of times. But when I won my Irish titles, that was a major achievement. To win 7 and then to box, like I said, for my country was a major achievement. But when my dad worked on the building sites in the UK, in England, we used to visit him from Ireland. And when I came to England, I got bullied as a child because I had the Irish accent. And I used to get beaten up because I had the Irish accent. So I tried to mix in and pick up the English accent. So then when I came home to Dublin, I used to get bullied because I had the English accent. And I've got 4 younger sisters. I've got 4 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers. So when the bully boys would finish beating on me, rather than them hit my younger brothers and sisters, I used to jump back in and say, please don't hit them, hit me. And I try and protect myself as best I could. All my years boxing, I only ever had 1 tooth knocked out. By the bullies, I got my 2 front teeth knocked out when I was 7 years of age, making my Holy Communion in Manchester. The two bully boys, they were like 15 or 16. They tried to take my Holy Communion medal off my waistcoat, and I held on to my medal. I exposed my 2 front teeth, and they knocked them out. So my dad, unfortunately, was away working a lot of the time. You know, he was away 10 months of the year. We'd only see him a couple of months of the year. But that's the way the Irish have been. They've gone away to work, send the money home, and he was a good provider. Even though he wasn't always with us, we never went hungry. You know, we always sent money home, and my mum would make a feast out of very little. Because when you've got 7 children, it's a hard task with small money. Anyway, she did wonderful things with potatoes, which is a main part of the Irish staple diet. Potatoes. She'd do amazing things with beans and apples. She used to make apple cakes. She used to do wonderful things, and she'd make a feast out of nothing. But my dad, who unfortunately couldn't be with us all the time, he encouraged me and my 2 brothers to learn to box, to learn to defend ourselves against the bullies. So that's the reason why I started boxing, was to defend myself against the bullies. I took some savage beatings off the bullies, and I could take a beating. You know I could take a beating because I took many. So when I went into the boxing, I was 10 years of age, and I had my first boxing match in Dublin at 11 years of age. I boxed a boxer called Steve Collins, who was 12 and a half. He was a year and a half older than me at the time. And when you're 11, that year and a half makes a big difference. Anyway, he battered me. My cornerman, I was 11 years of age, wanted to retire me on my stool, but I was full of courage. And I said, no, I'm not quitting on my stool. I can take this beating. It's only one boy hitting me, really. I'd been beaten outside of the boxing ring by gangs. I'd been hit with sticks and stones and all sorts. So in the boxing ring, even though you're getting hit, it's by an opponent with gloves on. So the punches aren't really as bad as what I was taking outside of the ring. The boxing ring was quite safe for me, really. Even if it was Mike Tyson or Lennox Lewis hitting me, it was still only one man. Anyway, this particular fight, Steve Collins was 12 and a half, and he battered me around the ring, and I lost on points. I boxed him again when I was 16. He was 17 and a half, and he beat me again. But he went on to win 2 world titles. He went on to win the world middleweight title, and he went on to win the world super middleweight title. So it was no shame to lose to that man. And he sort of set in motion what I've always been renowned for. Because on that day, as an 11-year-old little boy, people said to me, you're a very tough little boy. But I was tough because I'd endured beatings from the bullies. And that's what sort of had made me tough. And even through life, I've had to endure all sorts of beatings by bullies, you know. As a man, I was shot twice when I was in business after I retired from boxing. I was shot on the 26th of July 1998. People think that bullies only happens when you're a child. It happened to me as an adult as well. You know, I've endured a lifetime of dealing with bullies. And now I try and help people that are getting bullied. When I was getting bullied, it was physical bullying. And when you get an arm broke or a nose broke or a jaw broke, there's a time scale where you will heal. Now, people are getting bullied over the mobile phones. People are getting bullied over the internet. And it's mental bullying more than physical bullying. And there's no time scale for the mental healing. Sometimes they don't heal. Sometimes people take their lives because of bullies. And it's a tragic, tragic society that this happens in. You know, there's no space on this planet. There's no place for bullies. And I'm an advocate of anti-bullying. I believe that we've got to stop the bullying. And like I said, my bullying was physical. Today's bullying, when I used to be able to escape the bullies, when I could run home and close my front door, and your home is your castle, it's your safe haven, and you got indoors before they could catch you, you were safe. But now, even behind closed doors, there's no safe haven because they've got you on the mobile phones, they've got you on the internet. And I pity and feel sorry for people that are having to endure being bullied with the mental torture. And
it's terrible.
It's terrible. It is terrible, Matthew. It's terrible, Danny. It's terrible. I don't know whether you've ever endured any bullying in your life.
Of course, of course, absolutely. Yeah, it's all around.
If you speak to most fighters will tell you a similar story, that they've had to deal with bullies. Because like me, a lot of them start because they want to learn to fight, to stand up to the bullies. I've met so many all over the world, and similar stories, similar paths in life, you know. And like I say, there's no place in this world for bullies.
Yeah. And Joe, I wanted to ask you, so I'm glad we kind of talked about it when you were talking a little bit about how you had to adapt, right? Because you were getting bullied, you had to be tough, right? In order to kind of deal with them, right? And survive that. And that led you to boxing, because we talk a lot about having the right mindset in life, right? Yes. And I just wanted to ask you, was there ever a moment when you were in a fight and maybe it was in between rounds or maybe it was just before the fight? Were you ever like really, were you ever like troubled and had like negative thoughts or thoughts of like, I can't do this, or, you know, what if I get knocked out? Like talk us through an experience that you had where it was just a really physical challenge and also a mental challenge at the same time. I'm very curious.
Every fighter, Danny, experiences fear. every fighter. There's two spellings of the word fear. The coward spells it, forget everything and run. The fighter spells it, face everything and rise.
Yeah.
And that's what fighters are. Boxers in particular, cage fighters, modern day gladiators, we overcome the fear. I used to be terrified. I remember my first professional fight. I was at the weigh-in and I'm looking around the room and there's 5 or 6 big guys with muscles and tattoos and hairy chests and moustaches. And I'm thinking to myself, these are mature, powerful men. I hope I'm not fighting this guy. Hope I'm not fighting that guy. Anyway, I went in to see the doctor. My heart was racing with fear.
Yeah.
This is just a weigh-in.
Wow.
And the doctor said to me, are you nervous, Joe? Stevie Wonder could see I was nervous. I was terrified. And I went, yes, doctor. I said, yes, doctor, I'm nervous. He said, well, I've just examined your opponent, Joe, and he's twice as nervous. And I was so happy to hear them words. But if you watch a video, Champions Forever, 5 of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, George Foreman, Ken Norton, and Joe Frazier, talking about their life experiences in the boxing. And George Foreman, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, he's talking about when he boxed Ken Norton. He said, I'm standing in my corner. Ken Norton is standing in his corner. He said, I'm looking across. He said, at the finest specimen of a man, he said, I've ever seen. He said, he was chiseled. He said, I walked to the center of the ring. Ken walked to the center of the ring. He said, I eyeballed Ken. Ken eyeballed me. George said, I was so glad Ken didn't look down because my knees were shaking. And I thought to myself, if George Foreman, one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, can admit he's scared, why can't I? You know, and it's no shame in saying you're scared. And fear, like I said, it spurs you on. It makes you train a little bit harder. It's a driving force to get in. And once the bell goes, the fear leaves you. You know, that first punch is thrown, the fear leaves you. When I made a comeback, I'd been out of the ring 12 years. And I was broke. I hadn't any money. And I thought, what do I do? All I know how to do, my career had been cut short because of a car accident. And I was smashed up in a car accident. After one of my professional fights, I was badly injured, my leg, my shoulder, my jaw, and I finished my boxing career. But 12 years on, I was broke, and I thought, all I know how to do is fight. I've never gone cap in hand to anybody in my life. I didn't contact Mike for a handout. I didn't ask anybody for a hand. I'm a proud man. And I thought, right, what do I do? I'll try and fight again. Anyway, I made the comeback. Had a write-up in the Boxing News, which is the big magazine of boxing. And it said, George Foreman made the comeback after 10 years. Big Joe Egan makes the comeback after 12 years out of the ring. To get mentioned in the same paragraph as George Foreman was such an honor for me. Anyway, I boxed in Dublin. I hoped to get over to America, to box in America under one of Mike's undercards. And I thought, if I have a comeback fight, if I box in the UK, people are going to compliment me, the fact that I've climbed into the ring. But I thought, if I box in Ireland, they'll tell me the truth, if there's anything left. I was nearly 38 years of age, well past my sell-by date. My brain was writing a check that I didn't think my body could cash, but I needed the money. So I had to fight. Have to is a horrible master. Anyway, I boxed, and I'm sitting in the dressing room. I'm getting bandaged up, getting examined by the doctor. I'm getting examined by the boxing officials. They examine my hands. I'm nice and relaxed. I'm comfortable. And then they said, glove up, Joe. I've gloved up. And they said, make your way to the ring. And I forgot what that fear was like. 12 years out of the ring, I forgot what that fear was like. Suddenly the fear kicked in. And I had to make my way from the dressing room in the Burlington Hotel where I boxed as an amateur. So I knew my way from the dressing room into the auditorium, into the big hall where I was going to box. And I walked into the auditorium. I could hear the music playing. I walked past the steps up to the ring and I walked towards the exit.
Oh, man.
And honest to God, I'm not ashamed to say it.
Yeah.
the fear was carrying me with my legs out of the building.
Yeah.
I wanted to walk. My mother lived 15, 20 minutes from that hotel. I didn't want to be there. And I was walking towards the exit door when a couple of people in the audience tapped me. And I went, what? They said, Joe, you're walking away from the ring. You've got to climb the steps, get in and fight. And I went, oh, yeah. I had to turn back. It was on Irish television. I had to turn back and walk to the ring again from the other side of the arena. See, if them guys hadn't tapped me, I'd have walked out the exit doors with my boxing gloves on. I'd have been at my mother's front
And your
door.
robe.
Let me in. Anyway,
It's hilarious.
I got into the ring and I fought and I won in the 5th round. And I needed the money, like I said. It was a win. I finished my career on a win because that turned out to be my last fight. I had encouragement from people that were there. I asked them, how did I look? Brendan Ingle, one of the greatest trainers Ireland ever produced. He trained Nassim Hamed, the world titles. He trained Johnny Nelson, the world titles. He trained a lot of great fighters, the world titles. I said, he had a fighter on the undercard, John O'Brien. I'm not on the undercard. John was the top of the bill. I was the undercard. And I said, how did I look, Brendan? He said, you looked okay, Joe. He said, you looked a little bit rusty, but it's expected 12 years out of the ring. He said, you still got a little bit left in the tank. And I spoke to my old trainer, Tony Mann, who did my corner for me that night. He said, a bit rusty, and my old professional trainer, John Breen, who had a fighter on the undercard, same thing again. You're a bit rusty, but you've still got a bit left in the tank. So I got a bit of encouragement. Anyway, I decided to get another fight before I went out to America. And I was going sparring this day with one of my very best friends who I'd sparred with many, many times, grown up together, a guy called Steve Dawson, who was an incredible light heavyweight. I was staying in Steve's house, and we're walking out his front door with our sports bag over our shoulders. And his little boy, Tristan, said, where are you going, Big Joe? I said, I'm going sparring with your daddy, Tristan. He goes, who's the toughest? You or my daddy? I said, oh, your daddy's the toughest man on the planet, Tristan. Anyway, we went sparring like we'd done many, many, many times over the years. And he threw a punch. I had the headgear on with big gloves on, and I ducked into the punch. And the punch caught me on the bone of my eye. And I felt the cut open, and I felt the blood running down my cheek. And I knew it wasn't even a ferocious punch. I know punches are thrown with bad intentions, but I'd been hit by Steve with more ferocious punches over the years. But that punch landed on the bone. It split my eye open. The blood was running down my cheek. And I knew at that moment in time, my fighting career was over. That last fight was the last fight of my career. But I'd won my last fight. I won in the 5th round, and I finished my career on a win. Anyway, I went to the hospital to get the stitches put into my eye, which I had done many, many times over the years. And one of my pro fights, I got 64 stitches across the top of the eye, down the side of the eye, across the cheek, over the other eye. So I've been cut in many fights. But after I'd been to the hospital and I got stitched up, we went back to Steve's house, and I'm walking in the door with my eye closed and stitched up. And his little boy, Tristan, went, oh, what happened to your eye, Big Joe? I said, oh, yeah, Daddy cut me with a punch when we were sparring. Yeah. Oh, he said he was the toughest man on the planet.
That's right.
And I thought, insult to injury.
Yeah. From a child.
Yeah, it was funny looking back.
That's so funny.
But that was the end. That was the end. The last punch that I was ever hit with in a boxing ring.
I want to ask you about that. Like, you know, in that moment, like, it was clear to you. That's it. It was previously. I was wounded in a car accident, which was no control, no fault of my own. I was a passenger on a coach that my sister had arranged for family and friends to come and watch me fight in Belfast from Dublin. And a taxi hit the coach I was on, and like I said, I was badly wounded in the crash, and that finished my career, what I thought, the first time round. So I had no control over that. The second time, when that eye was split wide open, I knew in my heart it was over. I knew at that moment in time, if a punch that wasn't a vicious punch can split me open, could my face, could my old wounds take vicious punches? And at 38 years of age, time wasn't. Father Time catches up on us all, you know. We can slow Father Time down by having good living. Like Bernard Hopkins went on to be a champion at 50, and George Foreman went on to be a champion at 45. You can slow Father Time down with good living,
but you can't beat Father Time. And I think the years of hardship that I've had years and years of hardship. It took its toll. My skin had been ripped open in many fights, and the old wounds, they opened again with that punch. And I just knew. And it was even now talking about it, we like to think that we can fight forever, but we can't. I've watched fights on the television, even now. I'm 58 this year, I'm 57 at the moment. Even now, and I think I could beat him. Like I said, that's your mind writing a check that your body can't cash. But we're warriors, and that's it,
That's
and
right.
till my last breath, I'll still think I'm a tough guy.
and you still got the fight of life ahead of you, as cheesy as that sounds. It's true.
Oh, listen,
You got life as a fight.
Matthew, I love life. Danny, I love life. Life is for living, and I've been even though I've had a hard life, I still love life. And today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Tomorrow's not promised to anybody. Today is a gift from whatever God you believe in, whether you call him Allah, whether you call him Buddha, whether you call him God. But the thing is, like I said, this day is a gift from whatever God you believe in. That's why it's called the present. And you've got to live life to the best way possible, And you might not have millions in the bank, but you can still have a quality of life and have friends which make the journey nice. I've made 2 new friends today, and used to.
Yes.
And that's
likewise.
Likewise, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what life's all about, It's a journey, and enjoying the journey. And I've been all over the world. I've met many, many, many people all over the world through my sport. It's opened many doors for me. And I've been very privileged in the company I've been in through the sport. And I'm very proud of being a boxer and an ex-boxer, And the fan base of boxing, you might go to Asia, you might go to Europe, you might go to Africa, where they might not be bouncing a basketball or they might not be kicking a football, but you can be sure to be a kid punching a bag. It's the most cosmopolitan sport in the world. And I was part of it, And I was involved with 2 of the best heavyweights of my era, Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. And I'm very proud to be part of the sport,
Doesn't get better than that.
No,
doesn't get better than that. I want to ask you about a lot of, I have a few names on my list here, and I'm trying to be mindful of the time. But before we get into the names of certain boxers and athletes, I want to ask you about the Irish mob. You're in Ireland. The Irish Mafia, they've been depicted in movies and shows, and especially one of our favorite shows, Sons of Anarchy. There's a season dedicated to.
I love Sons of Anarchy.
Best show.
I love Sons of Anarchy, right? Yeah. I hope to be working, as I do a lot of acting now. I'm finding some people don't get one bite of the apple in their life. I had one bite of the apple with boxing. Then I had a second bite of the apple in the pub trade when my boxing was finished. And now I'm getting a third bite of the apple with the acting. I have been very fortunate in this life. Even though it's been a hard life, I'm very, very fortunate to get 3 bites of the apple. And I hope to be working with the actor Kim Coates, who plays Tiggy in Sons of Anarchy, very soon.
That's exciting.
And I love the Sons of Anarchy. I went on to watch the Mayans after that.
Yep.
It's a great program. And there's some fabulous actors in it. There's a couple of seasons or a couple of episodes where they go down the road with the politicals in Ireland. There's been a I'm not political. When I boxed for Ireland, there's certain sports in Ireland that there's 32 counties in Ireland, like the 50 odd states. Was it 50 states in America?
50 states, 52?
I think 52.
Yeah, something like that.
50. Yeah, well, there's 32 counties in Ireland. We have 6 counties in the north of Ireland, which goes under the UK rule. And Donegal is the most northernest county of Ireland. That goes under the Irish rule. But there's 4 provinces. There's Ulster, Munster, Leinster and Connacht. And there's 8 counties in each province. So that 8, 16, 32. That's right. Yeah. My education, as I said, wasn't great. But I was Irish champion. I was Irish champion. And when you can box for Ireland, you actually represented 32 counties. There's only a few sports in Ireland that are the full nation, and boxing is one of them. Rugby is another one of them. The Irish rugby is all Ireland. The soccer is divided. We have the Republic of Ireland and the North of Ireland. And I don't believe that politics should get in the way of sports. You know, athletes are athletes. They're not politicians. They just want to compete. And I can tell you a tragic story of a boxer who suffered at the hands of the politicians. It was one of your own, a great champion. Oh, God. Sometimes I regret having that last fight. Tony TNT Tucker. Oh.
Tony Tucker. Okay, we got it.
Tony, if you ever watch this, please forgive me.
Forgive him.
Forget my name. You are a personal friend of mine. But sometimes my memory goes. Sometimes when I was younger, I used the boxing as an excuse, right? But my memory isn't great. When I was younger, I used to get up and I'd see one of my brothers or sisters and I'd say, you, come here, you. And I'd forget my own brothers or sisters' names. That's so, I regret not being able to.
Joe, I forget what I had for dinner last night, so don't worry about it.
Anyway, he was the American champion in 1980. And what's his name again? Bloody hell.
Tony Tucker.
Tony TNT Tucker. He was the American champion in 1980, and America boycotted the Moscow Olympics.
Yes.
And all that man had to do was beat the same opponents that he'd beaten in the World Championships, which he would have been able to do, and he would have been an Olympic gold medalist. But because of politicians and because of politics, the Americans boycotted the 1980 Olympics. Now, he would have been an Olympic gold medal winner, which would have catapulted his career as an amateur boxer into the professional ranks. And they deprived a lot of American athletes, not just boxers, because of politics. They deprived a lot of American athletes that chance to compete at the 1980 Moscow Olympics, which I think is very, very unfair, because some of these athletes might have only had that one Olympic opportunity, because 4 years is a long time to wait to the next one. They might be past their best. Yeah. And I just think it's sad, and it shouldn't happen. Politics should not come into sport, you know. And when as a small nation of Ireland only has a population of 4.5 million, has to divide to pick a team, it's wrong. We should be able to pick a team like we do in the rugby, like we do in the boxing. We should be able to do it in the soccer. But instead, we've got that divide. So we're trying to make up an 11-man team with a split nation. And I don't think that should be allowed. I don't get involved in politics. I represented my country. I represented the 32 counties. And I believe that people should sort the differences out the way one of the great statesmen, one of the great human beings that ever entered this planet used to say, Gandhi, he used to say, it's good to talk. Try and sort out differences by talking. Going out with a gun or going out with explosives is horrible.
Yeah.
And if you look at us as a human race, right? If you look at the evolution of a human race, right? It's sad, really, because years ago, thousands of years ago, we'd kill each other with rocks. Then we had bow and arrows and spears. Then we had flintlock muskets. Then we had rifles. Then we had machine guns. Then we had big tanks. And now we've got atomic weapons. And if you look at the evolution of the human race, all we've really evolved in is how quick we can kill, how many we can kill. I know people that say, oh, the mobile phone is a great invention. Yeah, that's to give orders to get the weapons to the front quicker. The wheel is a great invention. Yeah, that's so we can get the tank to the front quicker. You know, it's sad, really, when you think that whatever God is watching down over us, he must shake his head and think, is this what I've created?
Yeah.
A race of people that just want to kill.
Yeah.
And even now there's wars going on this planet. You know, look what's happening in Russia with Ukraine, or Ukraine with Russia. You know, and these are families. These people are cousins, brothers, sons. And it's sad. It's
So
tragic.
sad.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't get involved in politics. I think they should sit down and talk. And there was a band years ago called I think it was the Pet Shop Boys. They done a song called "When Two Tribes Go to War," and they had the Russian leader fighting the American leader in a boxing match. And how good would that be if that the leaders of the different countries say, "Okay, you got differences that you want to resolve. Get into the boxing ring." And
How many pay-per-views would that sell?
I would watch that
I
all
watch
day.
that.
I would watch that all day.
Can you imagine?
Mothers and fathers wouldn't have to bury sons, and I just like to think that we
Can you imagine to like become the next president? You got to hop in the ring like Trump and Biden.
Trudeau and Biden.
True.
You know, I think there's easier ways. I think there's easier ways of resolving issues than going out with a gun. You know,
Yeah,
going out
for
with
sure.
I think so anyway. But that's me. I'm not a politician. I don't get involved in politics.
I think
But
we
I
just
try
thought
and
of a
keep
new
the
sport,
peace.
though.
I try and keep the peace, and I admire peacekeepers, and Gandhi in particular. He was an incredible peacekeeper, an incredible human being,
Yeah,
and the world should be more people like him. It would be a better world if it was.
I agree.
For sure.
I agree.
Definitely.
I wanna give you a bunch of names, and you respond to these names. How you feel? So, first on the list, you talked about it in your interview with our friend, Michael Francis. You talked about him, but Cus D'Amato, how important was he in your life and in Mike Tyson's life?
Cus was an amazing man. What he did for Mike, he legally adopted Mike. When he saw Mike in the Young Offender Centre, he knew he could mould that young boy into a heavyweight champion of the world and give him a quality of life that Mike hadn't had being from Brownsville. You know, it was a very, very tragic introduction into the world that Mike Tyson had. And then when Cus got involved in his life, it gave him a quality of life. Sadly, Cus was taken from Mike before he went on to win the world heavyweight title. But he instilled so many wonderful things into Mike's head to try and carry him through the obstacles of life. Unfortunately, when Cus died, the people that got involved with Mike hadn't got Mike's best interest at heart, and Mike was led astray. And Cus he minded not just Mike, he minded everybody that was in the camp. He was a very, very caring, genuine, wonderful human being. You know, he stood up for the boxers. He had his own war before he ever got involved with Mike Tyson. He had his own war with the gangsters that were involved with boxing. There's always been an underworld involved with boxing from the times of Al Capone. It's a very, very corrupt sport at the highest level. You know, this is facts. I'm not telling anything that you don't already know. When you've got two men or two women coming to fight, and one of them is being paid to lose, the other one's a sure thing. And it's unfortunate that some of these fighters that are proud, that don't want to take a dive, are forced into doing that. And Cus stood up against the gangsters that were involved in the boxing, and very lucky that he was able to still succeed at the level he succeeded in. He trained 3 champions of the world: Jose Torres, Floyd Patterson, and Mike Tyson. Floyd being the youngest ever heavyweight champion, then Mike took the mantle as the youngest heavyweight champion. Cus was an incredible boxing coach, but he was also a life coach. He used to speak to Mike, speak to me, to Tom, and people that were in the camp. I remember the Hilton brothers from Canada. There was a lot of people that I met in my time in the Catskills. Arturo Gatti. I met many of them over the years, and Cus was an incredible human being. He was a genuine man, and he had the fighter's best interest at heart, And I treasure the time that I spent in the Catskills, because it was like a home from home for me, away from Ireland. It was beautiful there, absolutely beautiful. Even though I was getting beaten to a pulp by Mike, that was only a few minutes of the day, The rest of the time, it was wonderful. Yeah. And Cus in particular was a beautiful human being.
Amazing.
And unfortunately, you never got to see Mike win the title.
Yeah,
He was
sad.
from above. He was, yeah, it was sad, but
Yeah.
he was an incredible human being, and I was very privileged to have met the man, and I loved the time I spent with him.
Yep.
Amazing.
I gotta ask you, Ireland's own Conor McGregor, the Notorious. What do you think
Conor
about Conor?
Conor McGregor is an incredible fighter. I met the man when Mike was doing an after dinner speaking event in Dublin. Now I know who Conor is. My friend Dave Cowley, who's an incredible fighter, his son Cian Cowley is one of Conor's chief sparring partners, and Cian's a great fighter in his own right. Well, the night that Mike was doing the talk in Dublin, I was the support act for Mike. I've been the support act for many, many champions. It's a great privilege for me to share the top stage with these great champions. But Conor came to the event, and I was introduced to Conor. I admire the man as an incredible fighter, but he should be a better ambassador for the sport that he's in, because I don't just believe that these fighting sports need great fighters. They also need great ambassadors. And Conor's conduct out of the cage sometimes lets himself down, lets the sport down, and lets Ireland down, because he's a renowned Irish fighter, and he should be a better ambassador for the sport, for his family, and for his country. And I think he has it in him, because there's certain times when he's a wonderful person, but then other times he lets himself down with his conduct. But as a fighter, he's an incredible fighter. He made a lot of money when he fought Floyd Mayweather, and they launched him to the world as a boxer as well as a cage fighter. He gave it a go. I think personally, if Mayweather had got into the cage with Conor McGregor, he would have lasted about 30 seconds. Conor would have got him in a stranglehold and choked him out.
Yep.
But I think he went several rounds with Floyd Mayweather, which was a major achievement. He had no real boxing experience. I think he might have had one or two amateur boxing fights, and he got in with probably the greatest boxer of his era, and he acquitted himself very well. He was in against an exceptional boxer in Floyd Mayweather, but he got in. He gave it a go. He made himself a lot of money, and at the end of the day, that's what he's in the sports for, to make money. And he's made a lot of money. And listen, I hope he enjoys what he's made, but he's just got to try and be a nicer person outside of the cage.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But I admire him so much. I respect him so much. I enjoyed meeting him that night with Mike Tyson, and I look forward to meeting him again if our paths cross, because I do believe he's an incredible fighter, but he needs to conduct himself that little bit better.
A few more very well-known figures. Obviously, I got to ask you about Muhammad Ali, what kind of impact he had on you.
I idolized Muhammad Ali. I met him on 4 occasions, and to be in that man's company, they said GOAT, greatest of all time. And in my eyes, he wasn't just the greatest boxer to enter a boxing ring. He was also one of the greatest human beings to enter this planet. He's up there with the Nelson Mandelas, the Gandhis. He is a very special human being. Boxing was privileged to have that man. That man could have turned his hand to American football, to baseball. He was a supreme athlete, and boxing was very privileged to have him. He got involved with politics, trying to help during the Vietnam War when they tried to put him in with the American Marines or the American Army, and he used his stance as the heavyweight champion of the world to say what was happening in this particular war was wrong. I think he's been proven since that it was wrong, and they banned him from boxing for 3 years, which I think they shouldn't have done. Like I said earlier in this interview, you shouldn't involve politics with sport. He was one of the, if not the greatest of all time champions. Boxing, like I said, was privileged to have that man. And when I met him, the first time I met him at Mike Tyson's fight when he boxed Kevin McBride. It was Mike's actually last professional boxing match when he fought Clever McBride in Washington, D.C. My father had met Muhammad Ali before me, and I used to envy my dad that he met this man. I used to do a Muhammad Ali shuffle as a tribute to Muhammad Ali. I idolized him. And when I got to meet Muhammad Ali, I froze. I actually froze. I was in the presence of greatness the first time I met him. And I'm just looking at the man. Even now, talking about it, I'm reminiscing. I'm in awe. His daughter was boxing on the undercard, Layla Ali. She boxed on the undercard of the Mike Tyson, Kevin McBride built. She fought an Irish girl called Erin Irish Toha. It's coming back to me now, my memory. I'm in a bit of a flow now. Earlier on, I was trying to remember the heavyweight champion's name is my friend, but now I'm on a flow. Anyway, when I got to meet Muhammad Ali and have my photograph took with him, I was in total awe. Anyway, on another occasion, I got to go to the Muhammad Ali Center. Got to meet him there. Got to meet him at the... I met him in New York. I met him in Washington. I met him at the Muhammad Ali Center. But then the most prestigious meeting, we got invited to his home in Michigan. Al Capone used to own Muhammad Ali's house in Michigan. And we were invited. I was over with a group of boxing people from the UK and Ireland. We were invited to an event, a birthday party of Jimmy Ellis, who was a friend of Muhammad Ali and one of his opponents. And we were invited. There was Ernie Terrell, Ernie Shavers, George Ciavallo, great heavyweight champions. And we were invited along. And when we were there, we were in Louisville. We got invited by Muhammad's people to come and visit him at his home. Now, we didn't realize Michigan was 6 or 7 hours drive from where we were in Louisville, but to go and meet that man at his home, I would walk in my bare feet on broken glass to go and meet that man at his home. And it was just incredible. We went through his gates of his house, the big sign above his gates, GOAT, greatest of all time.
That's so cool.
And then we were invited into the man's home. He was after having surgery on his arm, and he was on heavy medication. He was very ill at the time, and his wife asked the people that were with me, any photographs you take, please don't put them on social media because he's dribbling a little bit from the mouth with the medication. And everybody that was there, including myself, respected the wishes of his family. We didn't publicize the photographs. We had them for our own, and I've still got them for safekeeping, but nobody publicized the photographs. But I got to meet Muhammad Ali in his home, which was once the home of Al Capone. And it was incredible. It was absolutely
That's surreal.
Incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah, very, very surreal.
Yeah.
Very, very surreal. But like I said, I got to meet the man 4 times before he passed away. But he was, like I said, the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest man to enter a boxing ring and one of the greatest human beings to enter this world. But he's just a very, very special person. And you can ask any fight fan around the world, the top 5 of all time heavyweights. They'll have a different list of who they believe number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but Muhammad Ali will always be in everybody's top 5. To me, he's number 1.
You're being very generous with your time, and I do have a few names that I still want to go over with you because you're a boxing expert. So coming from you, it means a lot more than just random people. But Jake Paul, he's entered the boxing world. Some people love him, some people hate him. What's your take on Jake Paul?
I admire him as a fighter. Anybody that walks into the ring has my admiration. And him and Tommy Fury put up a good fight. I only ever fought 6 rounds, so I know how hard 6 rounds are. They fought 8 3-minute rounds. He is a novice professional, Jake Paul. Tommy Fury is a novice professional. Jake Paul, coming from a white-collar background, to get in And to fight as well as they did fight, they made it a good fight. The weight of the world was on both their shoulders. Tommy being the brother of the heavyweight champion of the world. Mm-hmm. And Jake Paul would having his 100 million fan base as a social media legend. The pressure was on for both of them. And they both got in and they acquitted themselves very, very well. And to me, Jake Paul brought a whole new audience to boxing. He had 100 million around the world, maybe more, 200 million, 300 million around the world watching the sport. Now, 1% of that new fan base watching Jake Paul decide to become boxing fans. That's 1 million, 2 million, 3 million new fans that the sport has gained. That cannot be bad for the sport, because the bigger the fan base for the sport, the more advertisers want to get involved with the fighters. The logos on the shorts, the logos on the dressing gowns. And it gives the fighter, outside of the fight, an extra income for advertisement. And I think that can only be good for the sport. If you look at the armchair fan of the sport, right? The armchair fan of the sport is the most important, because you're going to get the avid boxing fan like myself, like yourselves, that are going to watch the boxing because we love the boxing. But then you've got the armchair fan who's sitting in front of his television. There might be soccer on, there might be NFL football on, there might be baseball on, there might be boxing on. So he's flicking through the channels, right? But that's the masses. The armchair fan is the masses. And that's the fan base that you want. So if he can captivate 100 million, 200 million, 300 million fans now on television, on YouTube, on the internet, it can only be good for the sport. It's going to generate the money. And I'm glad that he's in the sport. And I'm glad that he acquitted himself so well, because he didn't let himself down. He didn't let the sport down. It wasn't a dirty fight. You know, the two of them boxed to the best of their ability. It
was a close fight.
Yeah, it was very close.
It was a good fight.
Yeah.
The rematch, I think, can even be better.
Yeah.
I think the rematch can even be better because they were both very, very nervous. I think in the rematch, they won't be as nervous. And I think they'll throw. Tommy boxed very well. Jake was trying to land his big right hand, you know, and Tommy, I believe, in my opinion, deserved to win. He was the better boxer on the night. Take nothing away. It takes two men to make a fight or two women to make a fight. Yeah. And they both acquitted themselves very well. And I admired them both. I wish them well. They're both young men. And I believe that they're good for the sport because they're bringing in a whole new audience. And the fact that
I agree.
The fact that the Saudis want to put them on out there, because there's a lot of money out there in Saudi Arabia. And they show you, you know, that there's so much money involved in the sport, because these people in Saudi Arabia, these royals in Saudi Arabia, wanted to associate themselves with the boxers. They admire the boxers all around the world. You might not like the sport, but you admire the fighters.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I admire Jake Paul and his brother. His brother gets in and fights as well. I admire both of them. Yeah. And they're bringing a whole new audience. The Furies are renowned. They come from a traveling community, and the traveling community is renowned for their fighting. They're a history of fighting. Tyson Fury isn't the first champion of a traveling community. There's been a lot of great fighters over the years from the traveling community. And if you look at the Saudi royals, right? The Saudi royals, if you look at the history of the Saudi royals, you know, the history of the Saudi royals, they are nearly similar in comparison to the Fury family, because years ago, the Saudi royals, their generations, thousands of years ago, they would travel around the desert, so they would stay in the Bedouin tents and they would go from market to market, you know, and they are a nomadic people. Now they're a nomadic people in an oil-rich land, but they still have that history of being nomads, you know, and they look at the Furies as descendants of theirs, because the Furies are traveling people on a different side of the world, not in oil-rich lands. They were in caravans, whereas the Saudi royals, their generations, thousands of years ago, would have been in Bedouin tents. And they are warriors as well. You look at the Saudis, they have a history of warrior in their bloodline. and they admire the boxers who are the modern day warriors, the modern day gladiators. Yeah. And I love the fact that the Saudi royals are getting involved and coming to the forefront of showing their love of the sport and putting the money into the sport. My friend is opening a gym in Dubai. I think he opens it this week or this month, toe-to-toe boxing gym. I did the official opening of his gym in Coventry in the UK a number of years ago. And he's opening a gym out in Dubai. I've got a couple of friends out there. I've got Paul Silky Jones, a former middleweight and super middleweight champion of the world. He's in Dubai. He's training people out there, so that they love the sport. And the fact that they're prepared to put the money into the sport and bring these big fights to Saudi, it's only good for the sport.
It's only good for the sport,
for sure. Because they are doing something good for the sport that I love. I don't know the Saudi royals, but I thank them for their love of the sport and for what they're doing for the sport. Because the more money they put into the sport, the better for the grassroots of the sport.
That's right. So I wanted to give you a hypothetical. If it could happen, what do you think the outcome would be? Mike Tyson in his prime versus Tyson Fury in his prime.
I think that Mike Tyson in his prime would beat Tyson Fury in his prime, because I believe that Mike Tyson could handle bigger men better than Tyson Fury could handle smaller men. Mm-hmm. But it would be an incredible fight because of both their boxing attributes. Mike's got great speed, got great power. Fury has great speed and a great boxing brain. But I love them both. But I just think that Mike Tyson's power and speed might just get the better of Tyson Fury. But it will be a hard one to call.
Yeah,
it will be a hard one to call. But I just think that, see, with Mike Tyson's punching power and speed, you've got to say that any fighter in front of him, you've got to give him the edge. The only one that I can't give him the edge over is Muhammad Ali, because I actually love Muhammad Ali more than any other fighter on the planet. And I think the world of Tyson Fury. He's my friend. His father, John, is my friend. His uncle Peter's my friend. And I know his brother, Tommy, and he's my friend as well. But I just think that Mike Tyson's power and his speed, people didn't give him credit for his speed. Mike Tyson and his head movement. Mike's head movement was incredible. Yeah. And I just think that he might just have the edge over Tyson Fury. But Tyson Fury is a fighter that could live in any era of heavyweight boxing. And Mike Tyson is a fighter that could live in any era of heavyweight boxing. And that makes them two very exceptional fighters that will go down in the all-time history of greats. The two of them. But we could talk about any fighter on the planet and pitting them against each other, and we'll all have different opinions of who will win on the night, how they will win on the night, why they will win on the night. And that's the great thing about the sport. You'll probably think that Tyson Fury could win, and you'll give your reasons why. But
yeah, honestly, I think Mike Tyson in his prime, nobody touches him.
Yeah, I just think that Mike had just that little bit of an edge in power. He
was ferocious.
That little bit of an edge in speed.
That upbringing, just everything about him. Just, I don't know, he's a machine.
It will. I tell you what, though, it will be one hell of a fight, because Fury knows how to fight.
Yeah,
and he has got such courage, because even when he made that comeback after having two warm-up fights and winning against the most destructive puncher of his era in Deontay Wilder, it showed you the courage that he had, and to get up off the deck when he was knocked down
clean.
And I know what it's like to be knocked down, because I got knocked down. I got put to the canvas. And I remember my dad used to call me. I never boxed at the level that Tyson Fury boxed, but I got put on the canvas. And I remember the first time I was put on the canvas, my dad used to call me for my runs in the morning, and he used to say, "Joe, drag yourself out of bed. It's like dragging yourself off the canvas when you get decked." I used to say, Dad, no one's going to put me down. I got strong legs and I got a granite chin. No one's going to put me down. Anyway, I boxed in the Acropolis Games. I had 2 good wins in the Acropolis Games, but I got my eye damaged in one of my fights. So I'm now into the medal stages, and I'm boxing against the Greek, who had 1 fight and then got a bye, or he got a bye and then he'd 1 fight. So I had 2 hard fights. He only had 1 fight. So when I went in for the medical, my eye was badly damaged. I shouldn't have passed the medical, but the doctor let me pass, because if he hadn't let me pass, the Greek would have got a second bye into the final, where he ended up fighting the Dutchman. Now, the Dutchman had 3 hard fights to get to the final. If the Greek had got a bye against me, he would have only had 1 fight. So they let me box. My cornermen at the time, Mickey Hawkins and Jerry Hanna, they said, Joe, your eye is too badly damaged to box. I let my heart rule my head. I said, no, the doctor said I'm okay to fight. I can fight. Anyway, I got in. I did the best I could do for the first round. He caught me. He closed my eye completely. Second round, I turned blindsided into a punch. I don't remember the punch landing. I hit the deck. So from the time he hit me, blindside, whatever punch he hit me with, to the time I fell, to the time I hit the deck, to the time I rolled over onto my left-hand side, with my left eye closed to this eye open, and I saw the referee go 5, I would have been unconscious for at least 15 seconds. So I know what it's like to get knocked out. And when I saw the referee go 5 with my right eye open, I'm lying on the deck. I was actually doing this. I was looking for my bed sheets. I was in bed. I'm asleep on the canvas. I'm trying to pull my bed sheets. Where's my bed sheets? I'm in bed. My cornermen, Mickey Hawkins and Jerry Hanna, they thought I was calling them into the boxing ring. I wasn't. I was trying to find my bed sheets. And I saw the referee go 5, and I went, I'm not in bed, I'm on the deck. So I climbed up off the deck, and I fell into my trainer's arms. And my trainers kept me up. I got beaten in the fight. I was stopped in the second round, but I got beaten on my feet. And I remember phoning my dad, because all I ever wanted to do was do my dad proud in the boxing. Yeah, my mother never wanted me to box. No mother wants to see her son being beaten up.
For sure.
But I did the boxing to make my daddy proud, to learn how to fight, to defend my brothers and sisters. And now I do the acting. I made my mother proud with the acting. But after that fight, I remember phoning my dad. I said, Dad, I won a bronze medal. He goes, well done, son. Fantastic achievement. I said, Dad, do you remember you said about getting out of bed in the morning to go running? It's like dragging yourself off the deck. Did you get deck something? I said, I did, Dad.
Yeah.
I said, I did. My left eye's closed. But I'm okay, Dad. I got up off the canvas and I got beat on my feet. But it was exactly as you said, Dad. It was like dragging yourself out of bed. So when Tyson Fury got decked by Deontay Wilder in that fight, if you look at him falling, he's asleep. He's asleep. He actually hit the deck. And when he hit the deck, he woke himself up. And then he got up off the canvas. And when you get decked, or when you get concussed, your cornermen are shouting, hold on to your opponent. Take the count. And then when they say box on, hold on to your opponent. Because sometimes the 9 seconds isn't long enough to get the composure again. Yeah. Hold on, and get your composure. But Tyson Fury did the exact opposite. He didn't hold on. He went on to the attack. How he could get his composure so quick after being put on the deck by the most concussive puncher of his era. You look at the knockouts Deontay Wilder had up until that fight. Only one man had gone the distance with him. When he won the title against Bermain Stavern, he won the title over 12 rounds, and he battered him for 12 rounds. Stavern's face, I believe, was mangled. Stavern had the rematch. He was stopped in the first round. But Tyson Fury has an incredible engine. He likes to run, which is a very important part of boxers' training. And for a 12-round fighter as a heavyweight to be still dancing in the 12th round, he's an incredible athlete. And to be put down in that fight against the most concussive puncher of his era, and to get up and to go onto the attack, he's an incredible fighter. Incredible fighter.
Yeah.
But I still believe that Mike Tyson would just have that little bit of an edge over him.
Iron
But
Mike.
that's my opinion. That's my opinion.
No problem. You know, there's a lot of things we can ask you, but again, you've been very generous with your time, and we loved your story.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm loving talking to you. My boxing career is over now. I'm trying to break into the acting world. I got Mike Tyson. I met a man at a dinner for a Joe Frazier tribute, a man called Cass Pennant. And I knew who Cass Pennant was. He's a legendary football fan of West Ham in the UK. And my nephew's a West Ham fan. So I knew who Cass was. So when I met Cass, half joking, half holding earnest, I said to Cass, you might write a book about me. I said, I listened to what you had to say. You're interesting. I was a support actor, Joe Frazier. And he said that if you get Mike Tyson involved with the book, we might be able to do a book. I remember phoning Mike from Cass's office. Mike was in Brazil at the time. And he said, anything for my brother Joe. And Mike agreed to do the forward for the book with Tom Patty. Mike agreed to come to the UK to launch the book in Canary Wharf. And it was probably one of the best days of my life. Canary Wharf came to a standstill. Thousands and thousands of people were there to buy my book that Mike Tyson launched. I know everybody was there for Mike Tyson. There were several world champions in attendance. I know everybody was there for Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson was there for me. He's my friend.
That's right.
And he launched my book in Canary Wharf. And it was a very special day of my life. But Cass Pennant had a movie made about his life called Cass. Nonso Anusi was the star of the film. He played Cass, and there was an actor in the film called Tamer Hassan. And Tamer said to me, he said, Joe, you've got a great presence on screen. He said, have you ever thought about an acting career? And I jokingly said, I acted my way through a boxing career. So I said, yeah, give it a go. And he introduced me to his agent. And she said, there's a movie that they're doing called Sherlock Holmes. Robert Downey Jr. is going to play Sherlock Holmes. Guy Ritchie is going to direct the film. And they have a part in the film for a character called Mac Murdo, who fights Robert Downey Jr., fights Sherlock. They said, would you want to go for the casting? So I went for the casting. And got in front of the cameras, and they said, read this line and give an intimidating stare. So they went, wow, the casting agents said, you've got an amazing intimidating stare. I said, I've got to look into the eyes of Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis.
Yeah.
Who's Robert Downey Jr.? Which who we love, by the way. Love him.
Yeah. Intimidate a quick for the casting agents, no problem. Anyway, I got the part. I went along for the read-through in Claridge's Hotel in London. My nameplate, Joe Egan, next to Jude Law, who plays Watson, Robert Downey Jr. plays Sherlock, Eddie Marson, who plays Lestrade, Rachel McAdams, who went on to win the Academy Award for Southpaw. All the stars of the film, the hierarchy of Warner Brothers, were sitting opposite Joel Silver, the CEO of Warner Brothers, and Guy Ritchie. And Guy said, Joe, I've been trying to get you in one of my films for a long time. And I went, no way.
Wow.
And Robert Downey Jr. leaned in. This is Iron Man. And he went, Joe, you come with a fearsome reputation. I couldn't believe that these people even knew me. Wow. But they knew me through Mike Tyson, and it was incredible. We travelled down to do the practice fight, and Guy said to me, he said, how are things, Joe? I said, life's okay, Guy. I'm making ends meet. He said, has your agent told you how much you're getting for the fight scene? I said, Guy, I never even asked. I'm just so honoured to be in your film. When he told me, Matthew, Danny, when he told me how much I was getting for the film,
that's amazing.
It was more than I got in any of my professional fights. And I was deadly serious. I said, Guy, for that money, I said, Robert Downey Jr. can really hit me. You can kick me as well if you want to.
That's hilarious.
You can punch me right here.
He said, Joe, I don't want you to be beaten up. I said, Guy, I've been beaten up for a lot less. I'll do a few weeks in hospital for that money. And then it turned out that I didn't have to do the fight scene. Guy gave me a part in the film that wasn't in the script, but I get called Big Joe by an Academy Award-winning actor, Robert Downey Jr., in a Warner Brothers movie directed by Guy Ritchie. It's made all the beatings that I've took in my life worthwhile because it made my mother so proud.
Yeah.
Because that's all I wanted to do in life was make my mum and dad proud. And I hope I did with my boxing, and I hope I did with my acting. But since that film, the parts have got bigger. I've just finished another film there with Russell Crowe and Ray Winston called Prize Fighter. And Russell Crowe calls me Joe. So by 2 Academy Award winners, I get called my own name in 2 massive films. And like I said earlier, the parts are getting bigger. I get to play the tough guy or the gangster. I've had to live the life of a tough guy. You know, I've done security work all my life. I've had to walk to the boxing ring. I'm enjoying the acting. Like I said, it's the third bite of the apple for me. And I really, really admire actors because of the effort that they put in. That 90 minutes on film is months and months in the making, years and years in the production, you know, and they are incredible, the way that they make it look so easy on screen when it's so hard, and the hours are long, but the fun is incredible. And when you see the finished product, it's just to be part of it, a small part of it. I'm only a small part of these films, but it's incredible. And I'm enjoying. My dream would be to be a baddie in a Bond film.
Ooh.
To be
That'd be great.
The henchman of the main baddie.
Yeah.
You know, they've had Odd Job and they've had Jaws. Why can't they have Big Joe? You know,
Why not?
Why not? Listen,
Why not?
Big Joe.
When I was boxing, I dreamed about becoming a heavyweight champion of the world. It didn't happen. Now I'm acting. I'm dreaming about becoming a baddie in a Bond film. It might still happen.
It could still happen.
So if
Definitely can.
If Daniel Craig decides to do another Bond film, Daniel, I'd love to be the baddie against you.
That's right. That's right.
You heard it here first, guys.
Big Joe, we want to thank you, and we want you to leave our audience with one final message, where they can find you, and one final message from Big Joe.
Just, I wish when people ask me for my autograph, and I'm humbled when people ask me for my autograph, I always find it happiness, Joe Egan, because you can have all the money in the world and all the respect in the world. If you're not happy, what good is it? And I wish your audience and everybody on the planet, if I could. My dad used to say, you can't wrap your arms around the world, son. I wish I could, but I wish everybody happiness, because life's a journey. Some people's journey is cut short. Some people have a longer journey. My great-grandmother lived to 104. When she turned 100, there was 5 generations alive. There was herself, there was my grandfather, there was my mother, there was me and my nephew Tom. She lived to 104. Some people's journey is cut shorter. My dad lived to 85, my mother lived to 80. But while we're on this journey, try and be happy. Some people have very little, but they're happy. Some people have a lot and they're not happy. You know, try and be happy. And I wish everybody happiness. So anybody watching this, I wish you all the happiness in the world.
Amazing. And where can they connect with you? You have Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, my agents do all the social media. I'm not very good with social media. There's Instagram and there's Twitter. I don't even know the names of them.
We'll get it. We'll get it. We'll put it in the description. We'll do it for you. No problem.
I don't know how to do it. I had 3 lessons on computers. I'm old school. I'm smoke signals and pigeon post. I don't know how to do all that social media stuff.
It's all good. We'll put the links in the description so people can find you. Absolutely.
Got you.
Thank you.
We're gonna close the show, so just stick with us, Big Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you guys who watch this, you watch it to the very end. We just want to say thank you. This was an awesome episode, one of my favorites. And Big Joe, you were great. So we want to say thank you once again.
Thank you, Big Joe. We appreciate it.
No, thank you, Danny. Thank you, Matthew.
And you guys, thank you. And you guys, like, subscribe, share this episode with your family and friends. And until next time, we're out.